Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Amidst peace negotiations for the Ukraine conflict, Europe to end dependency on Russian energy to phase out gas imports by 2027. US Navy vessels and military jets spotted in Puerto Rico as Washington steps up pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Virat Kohli smashes record-extending 53rd ODI century, while Gaikwad slams his first as India posts a mammoth target of 359 for South Africa in the second ODI in Raipur. The European Council announced on Wednesday that it has reached an agreement with the European Parliament to phase out Russian gas imports by the year 2027. Under the deal, Europe will impose a legally binding stepwise prohibition on liquefied natural gas, LNG and pipeline gas imports from Russia. The ban on LNG will take effect at the end of 2026, while pipeline gas will be fully prohibited by the autumn of 2027. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said in a statement that this will mark a decisive step towards ending Europe's dependency on Russian energy.
Today is indeed a historic day for our Union. Last night we reached a provisional agreement on the Commission's proposal to fully phase out Russian fossil fuels. We're turning that page, and we're turning it for good. This is the dawn of a new era, the era of Europe's full energy independence from Russia.
Foreign ministers from 32-nation alliance gathered in Brussels to discuss Washington's push to end the fighting, but US top diplomat Marco Rubio was skipping the meeting. The gathering comes after US envoys appeared to fail to make a major breakthrough on efforts to stop the conflict in 5 hours of talks with Putin in Moscow. As part of those moves, Germany, Poland, Norway, Netherlands and Canada said they would together commit some $1 billion more to a scheme to buy American weapons for Ukraine. The European Union is speeding up plans to completely phase out Russian gas imports. Joining us for more is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbello. Chiponda, how soon could this happen?
Thanks for having me. Well, the European Union is planning to end Russian gas imports by the end of 2027, and that is 1 year earlier than originally planned. Now, the move is actually aimed at increasing pressure on the Kremlin to end the war in Ukraine, especially as ceasefire negotiations between Washington and Moscow continue. Now, since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the EU has already cut gas imports from Russia by about 50%. Today, Russian gas still makes up about roughly 20% of the bloc's supply. Now, while EU countries have agreed on phasing out gas imports from Russia, oil is an entirely different story. Hungary and Slovakia continue to import Russian crude, and both those countries have blocked EU efforts to phase out the oil imports. And the European Commission now says it will present a plan next year for Hungary and Slovakia to end Russian crude imports by 2027.
But why has it been so difficult for the EU to break away from Russian energy?
Well, the European Union has had to strike a balance when it comes to putting pressure on Russia, which was its biggest energy supplier before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, the bloc has had to ensure it doesn't hurt its own economy. And gas has been a good example While the bloc has managed to cut Russian gas imports by around 50%, Russia is still the EU's second largest supplier of liquefied natural gas. And the fact is that that shift has come at quite a cost, especially for the German economy. Its energy-intensive industries relied quite heavily on Russian gas, and when prices were soaring, so did the production costs. And all of this, of course, also happened as the country was trying to recover from COVID-related supply chain disruptions. Now, households here too have been feeling the pinch, especially in winter. That's when, of course, they've had to pay way more for heating as well. And that's one reason why countries like Hungary and Slovakia have been resisting phasing out Russian energy imports. And it's not just because those countries have deeper political ties to Moscow. High energy costs could, of course, also come with political consequences.
If not Russia, where will the EU turn up for its gas supplies?
Well, the European Union has been facing pressure to buy more liquefied natural gas from the United States, especially under the Trump administration. Now, earlier this year, as part of a trade deal, Europe did agree to purchase $750 billion worth of U.S. gas exports by 2028. And of course, Europe is already the top buyer of American LNG. Now, according to an analysis by the European Commission, ending Russian gas imports shouldn't threaten supply in the bloc. Brussels does say that there are enough alternative suppliers around the world. So European consumers and businesses shouldn't have to worry about rising gas prices, at least not for now.
Shipanda, thank you for those updates. Moving on, Kremlin described the Ukraine peace talks as constructive, but said no compromise had been reached on the territorial question. The comments came after talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner held nearly for 5 hours in Moscow.
So pleased to see you.
5 hours of talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. negotiators, including Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, failed to produce a breakthrough on securing Ukraine peace deal. Kremlin spokesperson said, though the meeting was constructive, but parts of the plan remained unacceptable to Russia.
The conversation was very useful, constructive, and very meaningful. It lasted not for 5 minutes, but for 5 hours. Naturally, we discussed with US colleagues the content of those drafts, those documents which the Americans submitted to Moscow some time ago. We went through these documents. We did not discuss any specific formulas, any specific American proposals. We could agree with certain things, and the president confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things, and the president did not hide a critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals.
Just before the meeting, Putin said changes proposed by Kyiv and Europe to a US-backed draft peace plan were unacceptable. He said Russia did not want a war with European powers but was ready to fight if Europe did want a direct conflict with Moscow.
We are not planning to fight Europe. I've said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The question is, if Europe starts a war with us, I believe that very quickly. This is not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we act in a surgical, careful way. You understand, right? It is not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
While Tuesday's talks were underway, Trump told his cabinet in Washington that the conflict had not been easy to resolve, describing it as a mess.
As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine, but we're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th, and our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
Ukrainian president thanked Ireland for its support during a visit to Dublin on Tuesday, telling lawmakers that unity among Ukraine's partners had become a main weapon in conflict. Ukrainian representatives have held 2 rounds of high-level talks on the draft plan in recent weeks, which have been attended by Witkoff, Kushner, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Bureau Report, DD India.
And preparations are on for Russian President Vladimir Putin's two-day state visit to India beginning Thursday. The Kremlin spokesperson says that trade would figure high on the agenda of the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. RT correspondent Rory Suchet reports from Delhi on India-Russia ties.
Vladimir Putin coming here to the beautiful capital city of India to meet his dear friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It spans across the entire spectrum, whether it's the economy, whether it's the military, whether it's agriculture, whether it's entirely wrapped up into the whole picture of bilateral trade, because the numbers are enormous. Right now, we are looking at an annual bilateral trade right now of hitting roughly $70 billion. That is an enormous number, and yet Moscow and New Delhi are expecting that bilateral trade number to reach $100 billion in the near future. We're discussing the joint production of the BrahMos missile system, joint collaborative production between Russia and India to make it domestically produced here in this country. The BrahMos missile. They're also talking about more bilateral trade with the T-90 Russian tanks, AK assault rifles as well. The numbers, the investments keep going up and up and up. Now, Russia and India standing very much on the front part of the main stage today of this new multipolar world order. Russia and India are a driving force in this new polycentric world order. And currently, Russia and India are investigating a new type of payment system that will help them to essentially avoid Western sanctions. They're discussing this Russian payment system that should come into effect soon so that Russia and India can avoid potential Western sanctions. So with Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi here in the beautiful, beautiful capital city of India, our expectations and our hopes are very, very high for some major agreements to be signed. And with the driving force of Russia and India working together, with the likes of the BRICS family as well, which is frankly right now the biggest strategic partnership in the world. So here we are, I'm Rory Suchet for RT International to cover the 23rd Annual Russia-India Summit. Expectations are very high, and we're looking forward to telling you more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives in New Delhi on 4th of December, tomorrow. Let's take a look now at stories making news around the world. In France, thousands of people marched in Paris at the call of General Confederation of Labour, the Unitary Trade Union Federation and Solidaires, demanding people's budget. The protests coincided with the return of the 2026 Social Security budget to the National Assembly for review. In France, the Louvre Museum has inaugurated a new gallery in Paris created in the aftermath of crown jewels theft, showcasing 130 works from diverse civilizations, aiming to foster a unique dialogue between continents and eras. In European forest, a four-legged robot dog deployed walking through leaves and uneven terrain to build 3D maps in a push for sustainable forestry. Using laser technology similar to that in self-driving cars, the quadruped scanning each tree and pinpointed areas where interventions such as felling were required to safeguard the wider forest against extreme weather. In Spain, Madrid lit up 240 streets and squares with around 13 million LED lights, transforming the city's landmarks into a festive spectacle. Highlights include 10-meter-tall Menina figure sparkling with 37,000 lights, snowflakes arches along the Gran Via, and the 22-meter Christmas tree. The dazzling display runs until January 6th, with visitors able to enjoy the Navilas, Pastor, holiday markets and ice rinks across the capital. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Government of India drops mandatory pre-installation of Sanchar Sathi app. Special train carrying 200 teachers from Tamil Nadu heading to Kashi for Kashi Tamil Sangamam.
This week on Defense Dynamic, we break down the evolution from S-400 to S-500 and what this leap in air defense technology means for India. High-altitude pseudo-satellites, a first-of-its-kind manufacturing facility, perhaps is now operational. Why is India rethinking its aerospace propulsion roadmap? We explain the shift. This Wednesday at 8 PM IST, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Dissent is growing in Washington as US lawmakers clash over President Trump's escalating military activity in the Caribbean and pressure on Venezuela. Senators and representatives from both parties are now threatening to invoke Congress's war powers if the administration moves forward with a strike inside the country. Here's more by DD India's Harshita Oberoi.
For months, US lawmakers have voiced concerns over what they call an unchecked campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. On Tuesday, Senators Tim Kaine, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, and Rand Paul warned that unauthorized military action would be a dangerous and unacceptable step. A similar resolution in the House aims to block hostilities without congressional consent. Concerns have intensified following at least 20 US strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats since September, which have killed more than 80 people, and reports that a second strike targeting survivors may violate international law. Meanwhile, US Navy vessels and military jets were seen on Tuesday near Ponce, Puerto Rico. The show of force comes as the US maintains pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, whose chances of a safe US-mediated exit appear increasingly slim. After a recent call in which Trump dismissed most of Maduro's demands, the president declared Venezuela's airspace closed in its entirety, with Puerto Rico serving as a forward base for operations tied to the crisis. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth noted that strikes have been temporarily paused because drug smuggling vessels have become harder to locate, but emphasized that operations against traffickers will resume.
And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that.
US President Donald Trump warned that any country trafficking illegal drugs into the US citing cocaine from Colombia is subject to attack, underlining his hard-line approach to narcotics.
Anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
Amid this escalating tension, Pope Leo, the first US-born pope, cautioned against military intervention, advocating dialogue and economic pressure instead. Harshita Oberoi for DD India.
Hundreds of supporters of ousted South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol rallied in Seoul on the anniversary of his December 3, 2024 declaration of martial law, which suspended civilian rule for the first time in over 40 years and triggered nationwide protest and a parliamentary standoff. Meanwhile, current leader Lee Jae-myung marked the anniversary by praising South Korea's unique and special democracy, highlighting its tradition of peaceful civic action and resilience.
대한민국 민주주의에 독특함이 있다. 특징이 있다고 생각합니다. 그게 뭐냐면
I believe that there is something unique and special about South Korean democracy. That's the peaceful and beautiful directness fueled by collective intelligence. I believe it has the characteristic of not delegating responsibility but taking action directly, acting peacefully and beautifully without violence, and never giving up.
그리고 포기하지 않는다.
In other news, the centre has scrapped its plan to mandate pre-installation of Sanchar Sathi Citizen cybersecurity app on all new smartphones, citing overwhelming public acceptance. Launched to empower users to report fraud and block malicious numbers, the app saw record 6 lakh registrations in a single day, a 10-fold jump, pushing total downloads past 1.4 crore. Officials clarified the app is fully voluntary, removable anytime, and contains no other features. Indian astronomers have discovered one of the earliest and most beautifully formed spiral galaxies using James Webb Space Telescope. Named Alaknanda, this Milky Way-like galaxy existed when the universe was just 1.5 billion years old, challenging long-held theories about how quickly galaxies evolve. DD India's Taposh Bhattacharya gets us more.
Astronomers in India have unlocked a breathtaking secret from the early universe, a massive, perfectly formed spiral galaxy discovered using NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. They have named it Alaknanda, after the Himalayan river, and it's one of the most distant spiral galaxies ever seen. What makes this discovery extraordinary is its age. Alaknanda existed when the universe was just 1.5 billion years old, barely 10% of its current age, and yet it looks strikingly similar to our own Milky Way. Spotted by researchers Rashi Jain and Yogesh Vadadekar from NCRA TIFR in Pune and published in Astronomy and Astrophysics, Alaknanda challenges long-held theories about how galaxies evolve.
Alaknanda is one of the largest, is one of the most distant, large, high stellar mass galaxies, spiral galaxies ever discovered, and we were able to do this using data from the James Webb Space Telescope. Discoveries like Alaknanda challenge existing models of galaxy formation, and we need to now think of the future. What are the implications to models of galaxy formation? And before we do that, we need to gather some additional data. We would like to study how the stars and gas in Alaknanda are moving. Are they moving in an orderly manner, or is the movement of the stars and gas very chaotic?
The galaxies span nearly 30,000 light years, with two beautifully defined spiral arms curving around a bright central bulge. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope JWST infrared vision reveals dazzling star-forming regions along these arms, a beads on a string pattern usually seen in mature nearby galaxies.
Earlier, astronomers used to think that the early universe has to be clumpy, everything should be violent, things should be merging as stable structures like disk and properly rotating, in which spiral arms can develop, cannot really form. But we have found one of them, and that is why this discovery is very important, because we now really have to revisit the models of galaxy formation.
Until now, scientists believed early galaxies were chaotic, turbulent, and too unstable to form such ordered structures so soon. But Alaknanda tells a different story, one where the early universe was far more mature than we imagined, a milestone discovery and a proud moment for Indian astronomy. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
A special train carrying over 200 teachers from Tamil Nadu is racing towards Kashi for the Kashi Tamil Sangamam 4.0. The journey is filled with devotion, excitement, songs, conversations and spiritual anticipation. From Prayagraj to Kashi to Ayodhya, this journey is weaving together not only religious experiences but also a powerful cultural connect. The train is more than a transport, it's a moving bridge between Tamil Nadu and Kashi, celebrating history, tradition and cultural unity. UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan officially inaugurated the Zayed National Museum on Saadiyat Island's cultural district, a day after the nation's 54th National Day. The landmark institution honors the founding father Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan's legacy, while chronicling the UAE's history from 300,000 years ago to present, featuring 6 immersive galleries, cutting-edge technology and over 1,500 artifacts, including the world's oldest natural pearl and an 18-meter Bronze Age boat. The museum joins Louvre, Abu Dhabi and upcoming Guggenheim in cementing the capital's global cultural hub status. Global Village marked the UAE's 54th Eid al-Ittihad with spectacular evening celebrations, headlined by grand Emirati operetta From the Desert to the Stars on the main stage. The production brought together music, poetry, dance to tell a story inspired by Emirati heritage and unity, offering guests an immersive journey celebrating the nation's enduring pride and rich culture. The performances led audiences through the UAE story, highlighting its formation, significance of its national flag, and the growth of its people and culture. Festive Eid al-Ittihad, the decorations brightened the park with its gates, landmarks, and streets illuminated in national colours. In sports, after an all-round dominant batting performance, India have set a massive target of 359 for South Africa in the second ODI match in Raipur. The headlines belong to Gaikwad and Virat Kohli. After losing Rohit Sharma and Yashasvi Jaiswal early, Kohli and Gaikwad stitched together a huge partnership of 195 runs. Gaikwad departed for a brilliant 105, registering his maiden ODI century, and Kohli brought up his 53rd ODI century, his second in a row after the ton in Ranchi. The innings was capped by a brilliant display of death-over batting by Ravindra Jadeja and skipper KL Rahul, who smashed his second consecutive 50. The Proteas are now in action with the bat. They've lost Denock for 8 runs, while Marakram and Bavuma are on the crease. And India has announced their squad for the upcoming 5-match T20 series against South Africa starting from December 9th. Shubman Gill has been included in the squad. His availability is subject to fitness clearance from the BCCI Centre of Excellence. Gill has been recovering from a neck spasm, which he suffered during the first test against the Proteas at the Eden Gardens last month. India have largely retained the T20 squad that was successful in the T20 series in Australia, with star all-rounder Hardik Pandya returning to the fold. The top order will feature Shubman Gill, Abhishek Sharma, along with skipper Surya Kumar Yadav. Returning Hardik Pandya will bolster the middle order, which includes Shivam Dube, Akshar Patel, wicketkeepers batters Jitesh Sharma and Sanju Samson. Meanwhile, the pace battery, featuring likes of Arshdeep Singh and Harshit Rana, will be led by Jasprit Bumrah. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.